Hi guys, it's Emily from Novell Novels and welcome to today's video. This is my top 5 Victorian authors. Now, one of the top 5 is not one necessarily author, but you'll get the gist of that in a minute. All of these authors I've read more than 2 or more books by. All of them have had books that have rated 4 and above stars, and all of them have been really good. Obviously, it wouldn't be the top 5 otherwise. Now, I will say I did enjoy, I'm not including Charles Dickens in this list because I've only loved 2 of his books. So I'm sorry, Katie, he's not in this list. But all of the other authors have got books that I plan to reread. Obviously, I'm relatively new. I've only been reading Victorian literature apart from 2 for the last 4 or 5 years since I've joined BookTube. But so I will plan to reread a lot of these authors' works. So we'll get there. I'm just gonna kind of take it in turn. Now, all of these authors have really stuck in my mind, and it was actually quite easy to write the list. I did nearly include a couple of other authors. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a cold. But it actually wasn't that hard. At least 2 or 3 of these were straight away obvious. But there is a new entry. And do you want to know what they know? I'm going to go in order from least favourite up to favourite. And I'd like to know, before I carry on, can you predict any of these top 5? I would love to know. Like I said, it's a bit of a work, but I think a lot of you that knows you will be able to predict and guess. But I would love to know in the comments down below. Sort of stop here and have a think. Do you know any of these top 5 authors? And can you predict any of the books that I'm going to mention? Because I'm going to mention 2 books by each of these authors. Okay, so here we go. The first one, the lowest on the list, number 5, new entry is Oscar Wilde. Now, I read Oscar Wilde's plays last year for Victober with the lovely Alice from Alice in the Giant Bookshelf. And in my book here, I've got 4 of the plays in this book that I read last year. Some of them were amazing, some of the plays were amazing, and some of them were not. Lady Windermere's Fan was good, I think. A Woman of No Importance I did really enjoy. An Ideal Husband I don't remember as much, but The Importance of Being Earnest I thoroughly loved. And I'm not sure with The Importance of Being Earnest whether I loved it because it's got Lady Bracknell, which is where I'm from, in it. It's got characters in it that I absolutely loved. His plays are some of the only sort of short works I've actually been able to get through and loved. I just don't know why, but Oscar Wilde is the only person I know that can write works that are not necessarily long and novels, and I thoroughly loved them. So those 4 plays were absolutely incredible, and I really, really enjoyed this. I recommend this book. Another one is obviously The Picture of Dorian Gray. This is I don't necessarily like this edition, but oh my goodness, it is such a dark book. And obviously a lot of people know about The Picture of Dorian Gray. Dorian Gray is young, rich and beautiful. When he sees an exquisite portrait of himself, he is bewitched and offers his soul in exchange for eternal youth and good looks. Influenced by his friend, Lord Henry Wotton, Dorian becomes drawn to the corrupt double life, indulging his desires in a secret life of pleasure and excess, while remaining a gentleman in the eyes of polite society. This is incredible. I absolutely love this. I need to watch the film adaptation. It's a short book. I think it's the one I'm going to reread another time. I've got some Oscar Wilde's plays that I'm reading. Obviously this October, now I'm reading The Canterville Ghost. I bought another section of his plays down there. And I am collecting his work because I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. It's good for when I need a short play. I need something short but sweet but fun, because me and short stories do not go well together. So, excuse me, Oscar Wilde is in at number 5. Number 4, I changed my order. I always do that. Is Wily Collins. I have read 3 books by Wily Collins. I can't remember the third one. Arnodale. I read Arnodale and that wasn't as amazing. But the top 2 of his that I know I loved are The Woman in White, which I read first, and The Moonstone. I thoroughly loved both of these. I think I read The Woman in White last year with Naomi, and I enjoyed that. I read The Moonstone the year before. I cannot decide which one of these two I love the most. I think it is The Moonstone. I have bought The Law and the Lady, which I'm reading for this Victober, and I've also got No Name upstairs, and I will plan to collect quite a lot of Wilkie Collins' books because they are dark, they are gothic, they are mysterious. It's like sensation novels in its element, and I thoroughly love it. I am 101% a Wilkie Collins fan. Even though he's newish to this list, he has knocked my socks off. These two books are two of my favourites, classics, and I just, oh my god, Moonstone, I think it is just the best. But The Moonstone's about the priceless Indian diamond, which has been brought to England in the spoils of war, given to Rachel Veranda on her 18th birthday. That very night, the stone is stolen. Suspicion then falls on hunchbacked housemate, on Rachel's cousin, Franklin Brake, and on a troupe of mysterious England jugglers, and on Rachel herself. I did not guess the twist of this. I think, to me, Wilkie Collins is one of the first mystery thriller authors that he's ever written, and he is one of the best. If you like mystery thrillers, if you like gothic, if you like sensation novels, Wilkie Collins is for you. The Women in White I read last year, and that was obviously about this was apparently the first great sensation novel, and it's about the mysterious midnight encounter that Walter Hartwright's counter has. This has just got characters that a year on I can still remember. I remember Marion Halcombe, the evil Count Fosco. I remember so many characters, and I thoroughly loved this. I cannot wait to read The Law and the Lady, and I think once I've read Law and the Dude, you're actually probably going to get me reading Law and the Lady the first half of the month, because I don't think I can wait any longer. So yeah, thoroughly loved Wilkie Collins. He is easily in at number 4. Now to number 3, and I've realised one of number 3's books I've given away because I didn't think I would reread it. Guess who's going to be buying that this week? And number 3 is Thomas Hardy. Now, he has got a lot of work. I've read a lot of his books. I've got a lot more to get through. Obviously, I don't think I'm rereading any of them this year. I don't think I've got Hardy this year, but I've got a lot of his work, and I'm going to be planning to buy a lot more over the next year. I've got the number, apparently, according to my Goodreads, The Mayor of Casterbridge is actually my highest rated one. And I read that because it was a group book last Victober, and I thoroughly loved this. This was really good. And this focused on the spiritual and material career of Michael Henchard, whose governing inclinations are tragically at war with each other. A drunken impulse has led him to sell his wife at the country fair. Years later, she and her daughter seek him out in Casterbridge, where he's now a rich and respected member of Wessex society. However, it's neither his family nor the ambitious manager of his corn business who brings him down, but his own self-destruction. Self-destruction. This is going to be a fun video, sorry. Now, the next book that is my favourite by Thomas Hardy is Tess of the D'Urbervilles. But, stupidly, because it was so dark, I gave my copy away. Only for me to want to reread it, because it's really stayed in my memory. So I'm going to be buying it this week. So by the time this goes live, I would have bought it. But I'm going to buy my own nice edition because it's one that's stuck in my memory. I think it was the first Hardy I've read. It is one, no, it's first or second, and it is the darkest, most grismal book ever. But it's flipping incredible. I love his dark books. I love them so blooming much. Now, according to my Goodreads, I also loved Jude the Obscure, which I did think I'd remember that. Return of the Native I didn't love as much. The Woodlanders wasn't 100%. I've got the Blue Eyes book upstairs that I will need to reread. I did enjoy the Return Far from the Madding Crowd, but not as much as I thought I had. I've got his short stories of Wessex Tales, which I will need to reread at some point. And I have really enjoyed Thomas Hardy. I know he's Jem from Jem of Books, his favourite Victorian author, but I plan to collect a lot more of his books. He's someone that I've really enjoyed. And like I said, I cannot wait to get Tess. But Tess will break you. Like, if you want to read Tess, it will break you. It's the most dark and dismal book ever. But I loved it. Now, I'm not going to talk too much longer because I'm really not feeling 100%. But my author in at number 2 is Elizabeth Gaskell. sneaky peek to a future video in this month is that I'm going to be rereading some classics, and this is one of them. This is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I read this last year or the year before, and I don't know whether I can get away with reread. I'm going to be rereading some classics next year. Can I get away with rereading 2 books by one author next year? Because I want to reread this one, but I also want to reread Mary Barton, because Mary Barton was my first proper Elizabeth Gaskell book. North and South is incredible. It really talks about the cultural divide of the North and the South. It has a lot of people dying in it. I read it with like Ange and a few other booktubers a few years ago. And this is society's most powerful book. And it focuses on Margaret Hale and John Thornton. And John Thornton's the northern millionaire. Margaret moves from the south to the north and finds how much the culture and society was divided from the north and south. And Margaret is just, this is a bit of a romance, but a lot of people die in it. It's thoroughly great. I loved it. It was just an incredible, incredible book, and one I cannot wait to reread. I also loved Wives and Daughters. I think I've done a video ranking Gaskell's books, but I cannot remember where. I'll have to try and find that if I can. But Wives and Daughters is another favourite. I thoroughly, thoroughly loved this. This was her last book that didn't get completed because she died right at the end. So the ending was sort of compiled together by some of her relatives. Elizabeth Gaskell is just an incredible author. Like, I think she was from like Manchester, so a lot of her books are set in the Manchester area, and they have got family in them. They have got so much good feels in them. I have loved all her books. I think Ruth was a bit depressing. I didn't love that as much, but I've loved all her books. Her short stories are brilliant. I'm going to be reading the nurse's story this year, the short story for that. But this was just incredible. It really does talk about family, and it talks about like a father and daughter relationship. And it talks about stepmothers and stepsisters and fathers and sons and fathers, just family dynamics through and through. And this was such an incredible book, and I loved it. It has got some comedy in it, has got some sad bits. And I think that's what I love about Gaskell, is she does mix some comedy in, and I think that's needed sometimes in classics. But this was incredible. Now, you all know that my favourite Victorian book ever is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, but because she has only written one book, Anne Bronte only wrote 2. She wrote Tent of Wilde Hall, which I'm rereading, and Agnes Grey, but Charlotte Bronte wrote quite a few. But I cannot say Charlotte is my favourite, because even though she wrote quite a few, Jane Eyre was probably my favourite by her. So I am doing something I hate people doing, and I am rating the Brontes together as my top favourite author. Because if you combine each one of these 3 books, you've got the best books that have ever been written in my whole world. I am not saying this because I am named after Emily Bronte, but those books, and I did love Agnes Grey. Agnes Grey was just incredible. I think Anne wrote 2 books that blew my mind, and I'm going to obviously rereading Tenant and Wildfire Hall, and I'm loving it. I want to reread Agnes Grey probably next year. I might actually reread that next year. I want to reread a different Bronte. I'm not going to tell you which one. Different one of Charlotte Bronte's works, because Charlotte, she wrote Jane Eyre that blew my mind, but her other ones were not as incredible. They were all good, but not all of them. There was one that I didn't even like very much, but I want to reread them. She does her works, I need to reread all of them, but that is for another year. I don't want to overload myself with one author. But you all know Wuthering Heights is my favourite book of all time. It is a book that I know inside out, backwards, forwards, sideways, but I love it from the bottom of my heart. It is the most darkest, depressing flipping book. It is not a romance. It is not a romance. It is dark, depressing as fudge, but it is flipping incredible. I know it's a Marmite book. People either love it or hate it. Yeah, I could shout about that book till the dying day. Jane Eyre is the next one. It's the only book where I've watched the film to screen adaptation and flipping loved the film to screen adaptation. I've done read-alongs of both of these books. I nearly did one for Tenant of the Bible this year, but I'm not in the right mental place. Jane Eyre is, again, an incredible book. It's got characters you love. It's got characters you hate. It's dark. It's gothic. It's northern. It's set in the moors. It's flipping incredible. Cannot shout about that book enough. This one, rereading it, will probably shout out about it. Do you want me to do a separate video on it? Let me know down below. Again, this was one of the first feminist books ever. Anne Bronte wrote 2 books that will, she was the youngest, she wrote 2 books that will go down in history as 2 of the best books ever written. The Brontes in itself, I need to read the Tales of Angria. They are on my Amazon wishlist. I might even treat myself to them this month. So the short stories. Emily Bronte also wrote incredible poetry. Like, yes, she only wrote 1 full-price book, full sort of novel, but she wrote poetry, and her poetry is some of my favourite poetry ever. Not just because of who she is, but she wrote the best poetry. And I've got a book of the Bronte poems, and they are all incredible. The tragedy of the Brontes is they all died because of TB, and they all died of consumption back in the day. But they wrote the best, and I am thoroughly in love with them. But I can't thank you Victober hosts enough. Katie from Books and Things, I owe you more than you'll ever know. Because of Victober, I've got into classics. I love Victorian classics. I found authors that I love. I've got new authors that are on my list for this month. And thank you, Victober hosts, all of you. Like, you're all incredible. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank, especially, obviously, I love all the hosts, and I will be linking all the hosts down below. But Katie from Books and Things, Kate Howe, she was one of the another ones that got me into it. Marissa from Blatantly Bookish, who is one of my absolute booktube besties. She is absolutely incredible. You 3 especially got me into it. Rosamund Scally Anglia about the books is one of the loveliest ladies, and I'm a pleasure to call my friend. Petra, I don't know you very well, but well done. You got some good like book recommendations. But if you are new to Victorian literature, if you want to know more about classics, if you want to pick up Victorian authors, pick up these 5 authors, because they're all very different but incredible. And if you would like more recommendations, let me know down below. I'm not as eloquent or as intelligent as the host, but I love these authors and I want to celebrate them to my dying day. So let me know down below. And if you get to the end of this book, because of the fact that the Brontes are my favourite author, I would like you to give me an emoji of, because I like dark books, like a black heart, something that's got black in it, because I think for me classics scream out black. Any emoji that's got black in it, like a black heart or a black leaf, something that's got black and dark, something that signifies darkness. Like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, not subscribed yet, ring on my ding-a-ling, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.